Nanu, and welcome to Show People, the podcast that shines a spotlight on the UK performing arts industry and those dedicated to their craft. Covering the latest news and issues, what to see and do, showcasing theatrical talent, and of course, always trying to inform, educate, and entertain. My name is Andrew Keats. I'm a director and your host. Live long and prosper. Today's guests all share two things in common. They're all actors, and they've all appeared in iconic science fiction franchises. They've worn all sorts of weird and wonderful costumes and makeup, cope with extraordinary situations both on screen and off, and they're adored by science fiction fans across the world. But at what cost? Please welcome to our first intergalactic episode, Jerome St from Star Wars and Graham and Terry Farrell from Star Trek. Now, today's episode is a little unusual from other episodes as it's built out of 3 mini interviews with 3 different actors. We are going to boldly go where no podcast has gone before. Hailing frequencies are open, transporting us to an event that I've supported for many, many years and sit on their board as an advisor. That's right, we're warping to the 24th annual Sci-Fi Ball. Now, the Sci-Fi Ball takes place at the stunning 4-star Grand Harbour Hotel in Southampton. Basically, we pack a hotel full of geeks for a whole weekend in February and ensure there are guest talks, parties, cosplay madness, games, roaming Daleks, a 3-course black tie dinner, cabaret, cocktail party. Look, the list really goes on, but do check them out at scifiball.com. Because everybody who works for the Sci-Fi Ball are volunteers. It's a not-for-profit organisation, and in short, we raise thousands of pounds for the Teenage Cancer Trust, which costs over £1,000 a day just to run one of their units. But on to our first guest, and he is the one and only Jerome St. Many may have seen him in the Christian Slater West End production of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and towers above me. He is such a lovely man, and if you're a fan of Star Wars, then you're going to love this, which of course features a Show People CV challenge.
Jerome Blake, your Show People podcast challenge starts now.
Dear God. From beginning or end backwards?
Whatever you can remember.
Okay, in reverse order. Dr. George Hart in the bunker. Chief Bromden in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest on stage. Vogon Soldier, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Masamida in Revenge of the Sith, Masamida and Operancisis in Attack of the Clones, Rune Harko, Masamida, Operancisis, Ornfrey Tar, Horrocks Rider, Graxel Kelvin.
18 seconds.
Mick Regrap. There, I've missed one out there. Royal Guard. First Night.
Very good. Not bad. Now, you did miss off some of, more challenging roles, such as car mechanic in 101 Dalmatians.
Heavy Harry in The Bill. Where I one of my favourite things actually was strangling Scott Maslin over a BMW in the East End. That was really good fun. How could I forget that?
How can you forget such a... And I've also got psychiatric patient in The Bill.
Yes. Oh my Lord, that was...
I imagine a triumph.
I actually learned my lines from a stone tablet for that.
And also, this is quite cool. You're in one of Elton John's music videos.
Yes, I was. Please. Yes.
How cool is that?
Yes, it was immensely cool. He wasn't there, unfortunately. He was having a tantrum with a tiara.
I know you've had a really wonderful, different and varied career, but there are so many actors out there who say to me, oh my God, I would do anything to be in Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you haven't just been in Star Wars, you've been in all of the prequel films.
Yes.
And played how many characters now?
7.
And often multiple characters in the same film.
Yes. And on the same day on one occasion.
So just explain the kinds of things that you were doing in regards to makeup.
Well, strangely enough, this is one of the occasions when a popular cliche actually turns out to be true. And the cliche is size does matter. For this reason. Oh my God, how could I forget this?
What did you forget?
The Fifth Element.
Oh, yeah, you were in the most iconic science fiction film ever made.
Luc Besson will kill me for this. You were only allowed to apply for the job of being a Mondoshiwan if you were over 6'3",
Right.
physically fit, and not only physically fit, were prepared to surrender to a 3-month physical training program to make you fitter.
Wow.
Yes, people, it is possible to be fitter than I already am. Because they already knew that this costume was going to be a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And I petitioned for the role. The casting director was Lucinda Sison, God bless her. Mm-hmm. And in the traditional way of going after a job, I know the landscape has changed now, but back in those days, 1995, it was a much more traditional approach to it. You applied and then followed up. Mm-hmm. Followed up with a phone call a week later to make sure your application had got through. And I did that, and I spoke to Lucinda, not to her assistant. I spoke to her. And she said, look, forgive me, I've had, I think it was 450 applications for this role. I will get through them all, and I will get back to you. And weirdly enough, during the conversation, something that I said, triggered a thought in her head. And she said, oh, wait a second, hold on. Are you the guy that did that thing for Queen, with Jim Gillespie? I said, yes, that's me. She said, come and see me tomorrow.
Right. What was the thing with Queen?
It was a thing that Freddie Mercury did. God bless him and rest his soul. He knew he was dying when Queen made their last album. I think the album was called Made in Heaven. And instead of going down the classic route of, big rock band, oh, we're going to choose this song and this song for the lead singles, yada, 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 Freddie decided that what they would do, he put a fund of his own money to one side to help burgeoning film directors. And the idea was that each track from the album Made in Heaven was going to be given to a film director with no brief, just a budget. Go off and, do what you will with this song. And the song that Jim Gillespie was given was called Mother Love. It was a ballad. And Jim decided to do a kind of Alien type or Silent Running or, that kind of thing. Anyway, there was a Russian cosmonaut, I suppose is the correct word, lost and alone on a spaceship in the middle of nowhere in space. And there was an alien type malevolent force on the thing, and he wasn't quite sure what it was. And then finally this thing is revealed, and the thing that is revealed is me. If only it was just me, but no, it was me in this kind of gargoyle reptilian manifestation. And Lucinda had seen that. And that was the key. And she went, oh, yes, come and see me tomorrow. And I got the job. And I not only did I get the job, but I was chosen to be the guinea pig for actually workshopping how the Mondoshiwan costume would function, what was possible with it, how uncomfortable it was going to be, how big it was going to be. So my involvement with that film started, I'm going to say, mid-January of that year. And once or twice a week, I would go up to Pinewood, try this, see if you can do this. Okay, no, that's not going to, okay, come back Thursday. So from, I guess, mid-January to probably about June, I was already involved with the film, even before we started shooting the Mondoshiwan stuff. So, yeah, size does matter because eventually, if you're familiar with the look of the suit, I'm 6'6", and the head of the Mondashi one is an animatronic device which is directly in front of my face, but the rest of the suit is piled up here somewhere, like a collection of kitchen utensils. So the whole thing was probably about 8 foot, maybe even more than 8 feet tall.
Gosh.
And this wide, and it's made of fiberglass. So it's, cumbersome, hot, uncomfortable, this, that, and the other. Video screen, comms, all the rest of it. Eventually I asked them to put a shelf in with some books and a potted plant, and because it was like a little house in there, it was like a little hobbit cave.
So, as an actor, what kind of research have you done for these roles, and how do you rehearse that at home? Do you find yourself just playing with yourself in a mirror? So it sounded awful, but do you find yourself?
And we're back to size matters.
Back to yes. Back to pure smut. but how does one find the physical language of an alien creature?
For me, it's a combination of if whoever the director might be, if they have given you some suggestions, you take that on board and then completely ignore them. No, I don't. Luke, you know that. I love you. Je t'aime.
If Luc Besson is a listener of the Show People podcast, I will be the happiest man on the planet.
So would I. I would love to see him again. Honestly, he's such a funny, fun guy to be around. I'll just use the Mondashi one as a reference to answer your question. He had suggestions, and in fact, there is on the making of DVD, there is a clip of him actually talking to me and suggesting that I like this kind of rocking, waddly movement, which comes to the next part of the answer to your question. The costume, by definition, will make suggestions to you about the physicality of the creature. Now, in the Mondashiman suit was an extreme example because it was so heavy and cumbersome. There was only one way to make it move forward, almost like rocking a wardrobe, if you've ever done that, like point to point to point. The feet moved.
I've been in a closet before, Jerome. It's fine.
And we're back to Size Matters.
Back to Size Matters.
Maybe we should call this show Size Matters.
Size Matters with Jerome Blake and Andrew Keats.
Keats and Blake in the closet.
Keats and Blake have finally got together.
Keats and Blake got together in a closet.
Yeah, all we need now is Byron. Yes.
And so, can I borrow your Byron? I need to make a note of something. Yes. So it's a combination of, the direct traits of the costume will suggest things. But the other part for me, and this applies to all of the other things I've done in terms of prosthetic makeup and what have you, is, and particularly in the case of Star Wars, where I played 7 different characters, I believe the most important thing is to try and imbue that creature with a physicality that hopefully makes it not look like a man in a suit. God bless the guy who was in the creature from the Black Lagoon costume, but it looked like a man walking around in a rubber suit.
Yeah.
And that might survive if it's the only creature in that film. But if there are more than one, and particularly if you are doing more than one, then it's kind of incumbent upon you to try and differentiate the characters physically. So for example, Rune Harko, the Trade Federation attorney in Phantom Menace, the head was an entire animatronic skull where the eyes and lips were operated by servos which were on a backpack around the shoulders. So by definition, that suggested a kind of hunchback look to the character. Those servos were powered by a battery pack strapped to my right thigh, which was probably weighed about 20 kilos. So that inevitably suggested a kind of a limp. And so here we go. He's a bit hunched, a bit of a limp. And at some point I found myself, my right arm because of the hunch thing. I found my right arm doing this, and I suddenly thought of Richard III and, this blasted sapling and that kind of thing. So he was a bit of a broken down, beaten, wizened old geezer.
As wonderful as those experiences are being involved in, let's be honest, films that have extraordinary legacies that will outlive you and I. Is it quite a thankless task as a thoughtful, interesting, kind actor to, yes, it's lovely when fans might not, you can go and buy a pint of milk and no one's going to go, oh, you're, Luke Skywalker. But also it must be very, I don't know, there must be an element of being thankless almost, of people not going, oh my God, you're that guy. Do you know what I mean? Like the lack of recognition. It's a dichotomy for me.
I understand that, and I know people who would be concerned by that. Me, no. That I didn't get involved in this business to be famous. Genuinely, it doesn't bother me. There is a thanklessness to it, or was, in the sense that I can actually peg this to the month. This would be July of 2005. Revenge of the Sith. I was in Los Angeles on holiday. I wasn't there working. Revenge of the Sith was at number 1 in the US box office. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy was at number 2. Two things, anybody. But secondly, at that time, science fiction was not perceived to be legitimate acting.
Wow.
It was kind of over there somewhere. The irony is that now, because in right at this moment, Marvel are the kings of the hill. What was then considered to be geekdom and a bit left field is now absolutely mainstream, front and center. Probably the biggest money spinner in the movie industry. So in 2005. I couldn't get any traction out of the success of those films that I had been part of. If that was happening now, it would be a profoundly different situation. So that's the thanklessness of it in terms of the timing.
Do you think Star Wars has changed now? Is it a different beast to the one that you worked with?
It certainly has, because of the involvement of Disney. The emphasis that Disney are putting on Star Wars now is profoundly different. And there is an irony here, because the films that Disney have made with a Star Wars label on them are almost slavishly like the old trilogy of Star Wars. And yet there's something missing. It's almost like the heartbeat is not there. Somehow. Having said that, I did film some work for the upcoming Han Solo movie. Whether my contribution is still involved remains to be seen.
Thank you so much for talking to me.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
I look forward to us grabbing a pint together in town.
I very much look forward to that in about 2 minutes' time. But can I just say it's been a pleasure. Thank you for inviting me on. And to your regular listeners, I just want to say what a charming man Andrew Keats is.
Thank you very much.
And
Mr.
this
Blake.
is the Keats and Blake show.
Coming to you live. In fact, I know what I want you to say, because there'll be a few listeners who'll go, oh, I know. Can I hear your best Vogon once again? Because it's one of my favourite voices you've ever done.
Oh, well, have we got another minute?
Oh, yeah, of course we have.
Okay, Hitchhiker's Story.
Go on.
I was thrilled to get that job anyway. But once I got a shooting script and I realised that they were going to use the Vogon poetry, the worst poetry in the universe, I learned that poem. And I petitioned, I forget, Douglas Adams' great friend was one of the exec producers on it, and I got very friendly with him. And I said, please, can I have, as well as doing the Vogon thing, can I have the Vogon poetry? Can I do that? Because I knew they were going to use it in a kind of voiceover in the torture sequence,
Yeah.
And he said, I'll bear it in mind. Anyway, eventually they gave it to Richard Griffiths. And I saw Richard about, 2 weeks after the film came out. I think it was Evening Standard Theatre Awards or something.
Yeah.
And I walked up to him in a jokey sort of way. I got hold of my scarf and I was like, "You stole my poetry, you bastard!" And he was laughing, and he said, "Well, I know, but I don't know why they bothered to give it to me because it's so quiet in the film. You can't tell it's me."
That is the best Richard Griffiths impression I have ever heard. I know most of the guys who've done History Boys. That's amazing.
Thank you.
You've got his lip right, which sadly listeners couldn't see, but there was even the great Richard Griffiths lip.
Yes, girls, I'm a great lip actor. Okay, so I didn't get that, but I'm immensely proud of the fact that I was the Vogon that waddles into the cell, gets hold of Arthur Dent, and says, "Resistance is useless."
Can you remember the poetry? Do you think you can remember it now?
I remember the first line. "Oh, threadled grunt bugly."
Hi, this is Robert Duncan McNeil, and you're listening to the Show People podcast with Andrew Keats.
The next actor I had a chat with is actor Gary Graham, who appeared in Star Trek Enterprise as the recurring role Vulcan Ambassador Saval. He also appeared in Star Trek Voyager, playing the Ocampan spiritual leader Tanis in Cold Fire. Gary Graham is probably also known for Detective Matt Sykes in the hugely popular Alien Nation and its 5 follow-up TV movies. He's also played more than 30 TV roles, including most recently Nip Tuck, and has more than 30 movie credits, including All the Right Moves, The Last Warrior, Robot Jocks, Hollywood Nights, and Hardcore. Gary is from Long Beach, California, and he's the author of the book Acting and Other Flying Lessons, a step-by-step manual on how to become a working actor in the Hollywood film industry, with anecdotes from his 25 years in the business. Now, I took a lot from this interview, and I spent a lot of time with Gary and his wonderful band, the Sons of Kirk. You should really, really check them out. They are a group of wonderful lads that after the event I ended up taking out for a night on the tiles in Soho. I wasn't necessarily too keen or excited about Gary coming to the ball because I was very, very much aware of some political opinions that I simply do not agree with. And as I got to know Gary and as I got to listen to the views of some of his friends from the Sons of Kirk in regards to issues like gun control, which is very, very pertinent, obviously, after the horrific shooting that we've just witnessed in America, I found myself doing something which I should have been doing sooner, and that is not looking for the reasons to fight people, but looking for the things that we have in common and acknowledging that the very best way to understand views that you don't agree with is to make sure you at least listen and get to know the person rather than judging them based on, say, the outward way we appear through the likes of things like social media. So I think of Gary as a mate, but we don't agree on things, and that's okay. Here's my interview with Gary at the Sci-Fi Ball.
What did you think of science fiction as an actor? Did you really rate it when you were finding your craft, or was it always an aspiration or something you wanted to be involved in as an actor?
Oh, absolutely not. I never gave it half a thought. It's always been acting, and whether it's mystery or a cop drama, 2 guys stranded on an island, a war epic, science fiction, whatever. It's the story. It's just the story, and everything else is just the frame of it. It never mattered to me, and it was never a conscious choice to head to do anything sci-fi related.
Did you ever find yourself going, damn, I've got to put on some pointy ears and my mate's doing Tennessee Williams in New York. Do you know what I mean? Did you have that? Or did you respect it in exactly the same way?
Oh, no. It's a very, very recurring thought with actors, and I'm not immune to it. It's like Twilight Zones, the show Twilight Zones.
Yeah.
It was the joke was, everybody and their aunt were in a Twilight Zone. Everybody did it. And just cycle them through. It's like a turnstile. And it was much the same with Star Trek, the original series. And it was a syndrome to think that, there are serious actors who are doing serious drama, and then us who put on the pointy ears and went with these kind of less than realistic sets with the time constraints of Star Trek and whatnot. In fact, I'm considering writing a book, and I would call it based on this story of an actor friend of mine from way back who was. And I had been doing Voyager and some Enterprise episodes, and he looked at me and says, "Gary, how do you? God, it's so slow out there. Work is just it's just drying up. I mean, it's just gotten so bad. How do you maintain anything?" And I said, "Well, I told him about a couple of things I'm doing and working on, and just got done with this or that." A short movie, an episode, and I said, and there's the occasional Star Trek, and he just busted up and he just laughed, and it was in this casting office, and I just thought, God, I'm taking offense.
Yeah,
I'm taking offense because Star Trek been very, very good to me, and I felt kind of insulted, like, oh gosh, you had to put on the ears and go on for the occasional Star Trek, and I felt like telling him, you know what, I feel blessed. It's a blessing to get the occasional Star Trek, to do anything associated with this franchise that has shown such incredible universal appeal and longevity. So I'm proud and honored, and this guy, it seemed to be beneath him, that you would deign to do that, and I just want to say, man, it's work. It's work. It's you're gonna, and I felt that he was putting it down, and so I wanted to write this book for the fans, for geekdom everywhere, and I feel honored to be, included in all this, because it's first of all, it's so much fun, and secondly, it's where Gene Roddenberry was coming from, and all people who yearn for a better, saner humanity, and dealing with first of all, the adventureness of boldly going in search of new worlds and new realms and new possibilities is a great. It's the spirit of our ancestors. It's the spirit of the exploration. And we explored every square inch of Earth. Now the last frontier is space, and that's a lovely thing.
I adore science fiction. I think science fiction enables us to talk about things that are much bigger within sort of social confines that we wouldn't necessarily talk about. Basically, morality plays, which you and I both know, and everybody listening to will. But interestingly, how Marvel, Star Trek, American Horror Story, all of these new Stranger Things, all of these new science fiction franchises are now the coolest thing in the world. And you must think, well, hang on a sec, we were doing it.
That's right.
Why do you think some actors either adore science fiction Or why, like your friend, do you think they see it as beneath them? Where does that come from? And why, for any reason, is science fiction in literature, film, television, whatever, perceived as some kind of lesser art?
I honestly don't know.
Yeah.
I think this guy was thinking that mainstream is the way you get Academy Awards. You get hotter chicks. I have no idea, but I'm thinking that's his knee-jerk reaction to science fiction. I don't know, but I, like you, as you do, see the morality in science fiction as the most fascinating part. Technology is fascinating as well, but the moral story that creeps into Star Trek, and also Alien Nation,
Absolutely,
was quite as a metaphor for interracial relations.
Immigration,
the way people responded to the newcomers. Well, these guys are going to be taking away our jobs now.
Yeah.
They're infiltrating, infecting our culture. It's interspecial relations as a metaphor for interracial.
And wasn't it milk that could poison? What was the...
Milk could get them high.
That was it. That was
sour milk.
That was it. And you just think, well, that's something that we rely on to live is something that makes them high. It's just sort of
isn't it
delicious,
brilliant?
Delicious.
You take out, you'd have friends over, and you take out a carton of milk and go, oh, good month.
Yeah.
And pour the blop in there.
I do know the story, 'cause I've heard you say it 100 times, but you auditioned for a Vulcan, which, listeners who don't know Star Trek, is the same character as Spock, played brilliantly by Leonard Nimoy. And your show is a prequel to that series. Mm-hmm. And you played it, again, interestingly, a ambassador that was worried about this Federation Vulcan. Basically, whenever it comes to dealing with any races merging, I think you're the guy. Who can we talk about immigration? Gary Graham, that's the man. Okay. But tell me about auditioning for a role that you really didn't know anything about, let alone what a Vulcan was.
Well, we who were called in to do the auditioning, that's more the rule than the exception, going in and not knowing very much about the subject. You just get a shot at it, and you wing it, and you hope that something sticks on the wall. And such was my audition for Star Trek or a Vulcan. I guessed, and I guessed right in my audition. And once I was hired, it sort of hit me in a panic. Oh no, I guessed right. Let me see if I can remember what I did, how I did guess, and what I was thinking in creating this role. Or co-creating. You actually co-create it with a writer. It's the writer and then the directors and the producers and all that. But I really was going into this clueless and a little scared. I had my lines, but I just wanted to make sure that he didn't really step on it once we started. So we started filming, and that led to the discussion with Rick Berman about he says, "You look like a Vulcan." I said, "Well, I'm not sure I feel like a Vulcan. Can you kind of fill in the blanks? Or I probably should have called you last week. We should have had that conversation then. But we're about a half hour away from shooting."
Jesus.
Yeah, it was really, it was.
Why are my ears pointing? Do they do anything?
So he had the talk. He explained to me about the Vulcans, and I thought, well, that is fascinating. Now, it's not that they don't have emotions; it's they have too many emotions. They have too volcanic emotions, and they realized hundreds of years ago that in order for their species to survive, they would have to learn how to sublimate these passions of theirs, these very mercurial, volcanic passions, or they'd destroy their species. And they did that, and they found ways of Zen mastering their own impulses into a calm, impassive, non-reactive, intellectual, sensible, cerebral approach to life and the universe. And I thought, now that is just infinitely more imaginative and fascinating than what I was going with.
And but also that description, you say that about an alien, and yet you could say exactly the same thing looking at Catholicism, let's say. So if you do see your friend again that laughed at when you said about doing science fiction, do tell him to fuck off and ask him what he would do if he was given that character description. Gary, thanks so much for talking to me.
Oh, it's been a delight, Andrew. Thank you.
I'll be later. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Hello, my dears. You have the ineffable and probably undeserved pleasure of listening to the Show People podcast with Andrew Keat. This is Stephen Fry wishing you a wonderful listen. Thank you.
My next guest is, frankly, one of the most beautiful, inspiring, lovely women I've met in a very, very long time. Her name is Terry Farrell, and she's originally from Cedar Rapids in Iowa. Now, at just the age of 16, she was sending out her headshot to as many modelling agencies as possible, which would lead to her appearing in Vogue and endless other successful modelling campaigns. Her big acting break came when at 19 she read for ABC's TV series Paper Dolls. Next came Beverly Hills Madam, a TV movie starring Faye Dunaway and the very successful Rodney Dangerfield's Back to School. In Los Angeles, she studied acting with Peggy and Bill Traylor and then went on to the Stella Adler Conservatory with Arthur Mendoza. Then came the movie Hellraiser 3, Hell on Earth, and the pilot for a US version of Red Dwarf, and then to Star Trek Deep Space Nine as the wonderful science officer Jadzia Dax. Sadly, though, troubles came after the 6th season, and Terry is very, very open about that, and then moved on to the TV series Becca. On summer breaks, she also worked on television movies One True Love with David Hasselhoff and Crossing the Line with Adrian Pasdar. Since the end of Becca, Terry has made a stage debut at the Hershey Area Playhouse. She starred in Love Letters and Secrets of a Soccer Mum. She's also earned her Yoga Alliance teaching certificate and learned to teach hot vinyasa yoga with Baron Baptiste. She no longer teaches but loves her practice. She's currently taken time away to be with her family, including raising her son Max. Most recently, though, she has got engaged to the wonderful Adam Nimoy, who is the son of the great Leonard Nimoy, who played Spock in the original series of Star Trek. Terry just radiates love and warmth, and I cannot wait to see her next time she's in London. Here she is, Terry Farrell, nattering to me about being an actor.
Terry, what was it like being a model and transitioning into being an actress? What was that process like for you?
Actually, at the time in the 80s, it was a big, you weren't taken seriously at all. Even I was in acting class and, sort of you had to start out as an actor to be taken seriously as an actor. But if you were a beautiful model, no, they didn't take you seriously. So it was a lot of hard work, actually.
Yeah.
And then there were smart people who didn't listen to that and they just kept doing both. And I wish I had, but I was a nice girl from Iowa who didn't know anything about either industry. So, I listened to, oh, you can't do that. You can't, you're a model. You can't act.
Do you think, in your experience, obviously, you're seeing how Star Trek especially has developed, and you're now seeing people like Sonequa, for example, on Discovery, where, oh my God, a woman can be a hero, which, of course, in many ways your character was.
Yes.
But it must have been slightly hypocritical playing this intelligent, fierce, beautiful character with huge responsibilities, and yet knowing on the Paramount lot at the time there was underestimations, different pay grades, misogyny. How do you balance that hypocrisy in your mind and go home and live with that when you're working on a show like Star Trek?
Well, that is sort of part of the business, period. My first job was in a TV series where I played a model. So I think the thing that you do when you go to work is you're just still trying to do the best work you can do, because that's all you can do to change their minds about what they think about you. And the truth is, it only really matters that you're doing the best work you can do. And with all the other stuff, I don't think that you're thinking about that. Maybe when you're doing the contracts, you can say it's not fair that so-and-so gets a break because he's a man and you won't give me the same break because I'm a woman. Or they get paid more because they have a penis and apparently there's something missing with having a vagina. It's just not enough for a pay raise. Yeah. Yeah, but I think that's just dynamically a social thing, and it's been going on for a millennia. So that's something we all strive to change, but it can't get in the way of the work. There's certain elements to how the business gets politically run and socially run that you have to roll with. You have to, or when you don't, you get stung,
And what were your experiences of when you have been stung, and how did you keep going?
How did I keep going? I was stung on Star Trek, but at the same time, I got to have the opportunity to fight and say, no, it's unacceptable that you're treating me less than because I'm a woman. And so I will not take your take it or leave it offer. So I didn't have the job, but I was still auditioning for other jobs. And very fortunately, I got another one the very next day. I was testing for a job that started the following week on the very same Paramount lot. Yeah. But it was completely coincidence. I was reading for other things. It just happened that one actually worked out. So much to my old boss's chagrin, I'm sure. But still had to fight for getting a good contract and all of those things. And that's just normal stuff that you have to deal with. What's hard is you just don't know, what the bigger picture is because people don't talk about it. You sort of have to trust whatever your agent's saying is what the boss is saying. And, it can be complicated.
Thinking about how, and I find this absolutely extraordinary, where I've had to sit on the autograph table and look after somebody signing pictures. I know you've had it, and so many others, where someone from the public will quite happily say, you changed my life.
Yes.
Or you were my role model on that show. Mm-hmm. Now, of course, that's an enormously flattering thing. But it also must be quite disconcerting as well to have such an outpour of emotion, almost person after person, who just want to say, I love you, you did this. How do you contain that energy? How do you contain receiving that, knowing that lives have been changed by essentially a TV show?
A performance.
Yeah.
I think it must be easier in a way. I always thought it was really great, the conventions, because working in television, you don't get the applause. You don't have someone say, yeah, that was great.
If anything, quite the opposite from your experience.
Silence.
She's doing it that way again.
Oh my God, you're relentless. You're relentless.
No.
But I find, and fortunately with Star Trek, you get practice at handling this because it happens over and over again. But I think what it really, playing a character like Dax that's so compassionate and accepting of differences, naturally I'm going to have people that who feel disenfranchised or certainly on the fringe of what's socially acceptable, being accepted and loved. So I have this way of looking at it. It puts a responsibility on me to hold space for them. And maybe that's kind of the beauty of being a performer, is that when you're trying to tell a story, you're trying to pull people in, make them think, make them feel things. So when someone gets really affected by it, you have the responsibility to take it in and thank them and be there for them a little bit more than you would that you just made them laugh. It's just you help them through something. It's a way of giving back, to hold the space.
Just give an idea to actors what your working day was like, as in the amount of hours and the experience of just a day on the Paramount lot.
Okay, well, I would honestly almost cry on my way to work. I was so grateful to have a job, and it was so exciting because my very first job was on MGM. And so years later to be at Paramount was just another kind of, holy cow, I'm trying to refrain from swearing, so I'm sorry.
Oh, you can swear as much as you like.
Really?
You
I was like,
gorgeous
holy
creature.
fuck, this is amazing. And yeah, and honestly, that would be the thing, that the how big it is and how few parts there are just can get you through some really bad times, because this is still amazing that I have this job. And I come from a really normal place. So I could have had a really boring, minimum wage life, and I didn't. So, but.
And did you refuse to do that?
I refused.
Did you say to yourself,
I did.
I will do what it takes?
Yeah. Every door that opened, I went. I don't mean casting couch door. I mean, just every time it was, and that's the advice I would get anybody looking for a job, community theater, any opportunity you have to act or to do set design or whatever your desire is, no matter how small it is, you've got to start somewhere, and you build on that. You meet friends, you meet people, and you start building on that. And that's exactly what happens. Every opportunity you have, if it means you have to move to New York or LA or London or wherever it is for you, you have to do it, because that's where the work's happening.
And just give me an idea of the sheer number of hours that you worked.
Yes, back to the question.
It's almost unfathomable. It's like a sweatshop almost.
Yeah, it is actually. I would have to get up at 4 a.m. Yeah, and leave the house by 4:30 to be at work by 5. And at 5, I would do hair and makeup, about 2.5 hours of hair and makeup. Then we'd go on the set for rehearsal. I'd probably interrupt it, go on rehearsal for 7. The crew would be there at 7. And then they would light, go finish getting ready, sit in our trailer, wait for them to be finished, do more rehearsal to make sure all the lighting was right. And if there was no hiccup, then we start filming. Then you break it down and you go into close-ups and 2 shots and all of that. But there was never a day that was less than 14 to 16 hours. And most generally, we'd start out the week at 5, or I would start my week out at 5, and then we'd go about 20 hours. And then there's the shortest they can turn you around was 9.5 hours. Well, it took me half an hour to drive home from work and drive to work. So, and 9.5 hours, that gives me 8.5 hours. But then I'm going to wash all my hair and makeup off, which for, Dax, I had this hair teased. It took me about half an hour to get all that stuff off. You got to make yourself dinner. You got to learn your lines. You got to get some sleep. You're never going to work it out that you're getting 8 hours. It's not going to happen.
And this was nearly 6 years of doing that.
Yeah.
I mean, having all of that, which for most people, just a week of that would probably make them want to go, I'm going on a holiday. But you had 6 years.
6 years. And I was number 5 on the call sheet. So I wasn't even, like Avery, the 2 leads are the ones who don't get the breaks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And on top of that, anyone knows just touring in a theatre production, for example, to keep a company happy and together and working and playful is hard enough, for 6 months to a year. To be with people from day one for six years under that pressure, how on earth do you maintain a working relationship that's civil, but under that pressure?
You just do. I mean, there are days that everybody had their explosions, and you look back on it, and it's all is forgiven. And if anything, I think that's why we're so tight, is because we survived it.
Yeah.
We really survived it together. And the thing is that there's nothing quite like being sick, being upset, and they're still taking a photograph of you doing it. Everything you're going through. Everybody else on the crew, you think, you never get a day off, but no one's taking your picture while you're going through it, while you're going through divorce or illness or death, or it's just you. But that's part of the exciting part about being an actor, is that whole show must go on thing. I grew up in a, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, brush yourself off. You just got to keep going. And I think there's something to be said for that. People that are like that, you have to be unstoppable or life is going to take you down. And it's that part of that. You just live that as an actor.
What are the challenges that you want to present yourself now? What does Terry Farrell want to do to challenge herself as an artist?
Oh my goodness. Well, I'd like for Max to just get a little bit more mature. He's 14, and
This is your son, isn't it?
this is my son. So this is fortunately, he's around the good kids. You know,
Were you around the good kids when you were growing up?
I was. Actually, I was. My parents were a much more difficult peer group for, no, have a drink, go, than anyone I was around. But, it's legal in California to smoke pot now. So I was like, okay, I left him alone with some friends in the house. And I said, okay, if you guys find my pot, do not smoke it. I will kill you. You're still too young. And they were like, oh, Mrs. Baker, we still have a couple of years. And I'm like, yeah, a couple of years.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds good, honey. So I just want to get a couple of those debacles under my belt. And then I actually would like to work again, but I think it's really difficult now because, not difficult. I'm more specific now. When I was younger and single, it was just give me a job. It didn't matter where I was going. I didn't want to leave LA or New York. I didn't want to work in Vancouver or New Zealand, as beautiful as they are. I didn't want to relocate. But now it's specific where, I have Adam now and I want to have a life. I don't want to be a gypsy the rest of my life. So that changes your career in a big way. So while you're young, get out there and just do whatever it is. Don't put restrictions on yourself. But I'd love for it to be something. I want to do fun things like be a witch or like some crazy stuff, And then at the same time, I think it would be fun to just, be that, she's the girlfriend in the movie. She's the wife in the movie. So you can just go work a couple of things here and there but still go home.
It must be tricky sometimes. I'm not saying it's a negative thing, but as an artist, there must be times where, and I know we're sat at the moment in a Star Trek convention where you want to go,
right.
I did do other things other than Dax. There is more to me. And I'd love to see you doing some more things. I want to see you on stage.
I would love to do something on stage too. I think that would probably be an easier thing, ironically enough, because you can produce it.
Yeah.
And I probably could find people to produce it. And in Los Angeles, it's so massive. And there's so many different ways that you can make a space feasible for the theater that I think that would be great. Because I've only done 2 community theater projects, but Becker was a 200-seat. I think most people don't know that there really was a live audience. Yeah. So there was, I think it was 96 episodes of Becker. And that cured me of all real stage fright in that way, where you just, pop out the fourth wall, make them all laugh. And then back to the show, friends.
The final thing I'm going to ask you to do.
Yes.
So the Show People podcast doesn't take itself too seriously.
Okay.
And this is a very special episode where normally we have an artist for about an hour and we go into so much detail, but you have quite a grueling schedule today. So I've taken one of the games that we play, which from knowing you, I think might be hysterical. And when you get to that time in rehearsal, it's usually about 4:00 and the world just goes a little bit crazy. We get a bit wide-eyed and a little bit silly.
Yeah.
We tend to finish off the Show People podcast with a game called Funny 5 Minutes. Now, it's a game, Terry Farrell, I have assembled in front of me, in short, some of the most ridiculous questions that have ever been asked. You have to answer as many as possible and as quickly as possible. However, you are allowed 3 passes, so use them wisely because you never know what I'm going to ask. Terry Farrell, let's play Funny 5 Minutes. I can't wait for you to listen to this.
I love this music.
Terry Farrell, what's the strangest thing you've ever had in your mouth?
Oh my God!
Strangest thing?
A toothpick.
A toothpick?
No. Pass.
What is your worst habit?
It was smoking.
And you've given up?
Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
If you were a superhero, what would your superpower be?
I can fly.
Very good. Would you rather fight 1 horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses?
100 deck-sized horses.
And the reason for that, Terry?
I can kick them.
Yeah, absolutely. Who would play you in a movie of your life?
Your friend Ingrid.
Ingrid Oliver.
Yeah.
Good answer. If you had to choose your last meal, what would it be?
Steak, mash, asparagus.
That's like my favourite meal
Really?
ever.
Yeah. Medium rare.
Would you ever want to swim with sharks?
No.
No, why would you?
Why?
Sharks.
Yeah.
Evil little fuckers. Terry Farrell, do you believe in aliens?
Yes.
Do
no.
you?
No, I don't.
How many pairs of shoes do you own?
30.
That's
maybe.
a lie, isn't it? What, 30?
I don't know.
30,000
No.
pairs.
I relocated, so I totally 30. They're all tennis shoes and Birkenstocks.
Do you believe in ghosts?
No.
Sondheim or Andrew Lloyd Webber?
Sondheim.
Who is the most beautiful person you've ever kissed?
Well, Adam Nimoy.
Who is the ugliest person you ever kissed?
Worf.
How do you like your eggs in the morning?
Sunny side up.
Are you an early riser or a night owl?
Early riser.
Do you have a teddy bear?
No.
Oh.
I know. I do have Adam Nimoy, though.
And he is a lovely teddy bear.
He's a hairless teddy bear, but yeah.
Have you ever been arrested?
No.
Good. If you had to jump into a swimming pool filled with something, what would it be?
Men.
Who is the most famous person you've ever met?
Lauren Bacall.
Oh my God.
No, Ronald Reagan.
Have you met Reagan?
Yes.
Where?
Isn't that weird? The White House.
You went to the White House?
I did go to the White House. The Shrivers were presenting a stamp for Special Olympics, and I was dating Anthony Shriver at the time, and Mr. Shriver took me, and then I met Ronald and Nancy Reagan.
I love that you went to the White House. Sum Donald Trump up in one word. You don't want to say that word, do you? No, me neither. Where is the strangest place you've ever had to have a wee?
Oh, in Africa, out in the bush.
From the bush to the bush.
Well, yeah. Well, and you don't know what's in them. I mean, the bush. It's scary. You have to pee bad if you have to pee in Africa.
What is your worst habit? Habit. Oh, no, we did this one, smoking past.
Yeah.
What is the worst note you've ever been given by a director?
Like this.
What, and then do it for you in front of you?
Yes.
And then whereabouts did you punch them after that?
Yeah, like this. Not like me, but like this kind of thing. Yeah.
Like an amateur director.
What does that mean?
It means passive-aggressive nastiness. Do you have a favourite sport?
Kickboxing.
Well, Terry, thank you so much for chatting with me. I'm going to release you to the fans. And he said hounds then, but actually it's very similar. Keep going. Have a wonderful time with Adam. And good luck with everything.
Thank you. I love you, Andrew.
I love you more.
Hi, I'm Alex from Theatre Accounts. We are a friendly team of accountants who work with clients in the entertainment industry, and it's our mission to make tax simple. We offer a no jargon, simple approach with no hidden fees. Here's my tax tip of the week. Knowing what expenses you can claim can be very confusing, and allowable costs vary depending on the type of work that you do. Quite often, people either claim too many expenses or too little. Costs such as agent's commission, travel, mobile phone bills, digs and food on tour are examples of allowable expenses. However, if you use something for business and personal use, such as your mobile phone, you can only claim a business proportion of this. For further examples, we've pinned a link to our blog post about expenses on our Twitter page. We're happy to help and answer any questions that you may have, and you can contact us via our website www.theatrecounts.co.uk, or you can follow us on Twitter @theatrecounts. If you're a new client to us and fancy a £50 discount off your first year's fee, just quote the Show People podcast.
Well, sadly, that's all of the guests that I recorded at the Sci-Fi Ball. But I want to talk about two things. Number one, why on earth I am so passionate about science fiction. And secondly, how on earth am I involved with the Sci-Fi Ball? Why do I love science fiction? I've spoken quite openly about in previous episodes that as a fat, ugly, spotty, glasses-wearing, not very confident young gay kid from Bournemouth, I did have under my bed various plays and librettos, which really influenced my entire life about becoming a theatre director. But when I wasn't reading those plays, I was probably watching a science fiction episode, whether that be Scott Bakula in the likes of Quantum Leap, to DeForest Kelley in the original series of Star Trek, to Battlestar Galactica, to Babylon 5, to, of course, Doctor Who. Why was I drawn to these TV shows? Well, a lot of the British ones had some of our finest theatre actors ever. But more importantly, science fiction often teaches us a way to look at bigger issues, to discuss life and death, racism, genocide, what it is to be human, what is intelligence, what is thought, what is God. And sci-fi looks at all of those things, and I really put my passion to be curious about the world and to do the right thing down to those moral questions that I learned from those television shows and indeed books and films. So how did I get involved with the Sci-Fi Ball? Well, as I said, I was a typical teenager, desperate to discover himself and the world around him and all of the questions that come with that. And as I was growing up, I felt very, very lonely and sought out a science fiction appreciation group. They were called the USS Excalibur, and it was primarily Star Trek, but it was all science fiction, really, that brought together fans. Once a month, they would do carnival floats, there would be little socials in pubs, but every month there would be, at Bournemouth University, a little dealer's room. There would sometimes maybe be a guest. They would show the latest sci-fi films or TV shows that were just broadcast in America, and they somehow managed to get it over to this country. But more importantly, I got to talk to adults who would talk to me as another person. And you know, when you're a child and you've got adults that listen to you, they quickly become your role models. Now, all of those university students would go on to have extraordinary careers in technology and medicine and law and endless other pursuits. A very, very dear friend and end up had the idea of running an actual convention, and that was 24 years ago. That convention is still running, and our current nominated charity, which is the Teenage Cancer Trust, which I think we've supported, for 9 years, I'm not sure. We've raised over £49,000 for them. And prior to that, we helped other charities. The Sci-Fi Ball really is an amazing, amazing weekend. And what was really special to me is from being that ugly, bizarre, warped, pardon the pun, child, as I grew older and became a man and developed my career in theatre, a lot of the guests who are so vital for the Sci-Fi Ball to raise its money became my mates. Not through science fiction, but through theatre and the other creative projects and things that I'm involved in. So it's been really lovely to go back to my sort of adopted family that taught me a lot of very wonderful things and saw me make a lot of horrible mistakes, and treat me in the same way that science fiction teaches us, which is to be kind to one another, to be accepting, and to see the potential in everybody with no hate. I think science fiction is a really wonderful thing, and so is the Sci-Fi Ball. What's been a surprise, thanks to talking to the 3 actors I've spoken to and endless other people in my life, is to have young people that I watched in the 90s who are now older now that were my heroes, and now they're fellow theatre makers or fellow artists, and I never tire of seeing any of them wake up on my sofa in Wimbledon as a mate, rather when I was a kid when they were my heroes.
Hello, this is Rufus Hound, and you're listening to the Show People podcast with Andrew Keats. But the real question is, what are you doing while you're listening? Stop touching that, you filthy bastard.
That noise tells me that is sadly all of the time that we have left. So firstly, thank you so much to my friends and colleagues at the Sci-Fi Ball. And of course, thank you to my 3 very, very special guests, Jerome St and Blake, Gary Graham, and of course, Terry Farrell! If you would like to find out more about the Sci-Fi Ball, it's very, very easy. Just go to www.scifiball.com or jump on facebook.com/SFB events or follow them on Twitter at Sci-Fi Ball or Instagram at Sci-Fi Ball. I'm very pleased to say after Sci-Fi Ball 24, we were able to give a staggering amount to the Teenage Cancer Trust, and that's £8,000 worth of profit winging its way to the TCT. So well done everyone at Sci-Fi Ball, and thank you to my guests for enabling us to make that very generous donation. This podcast is produced by Arian Productions Limited, dedicated to giving opportunities to theatre makers. Now this is where I ask you to help. If you can help support the work we do, please become a friend of Arian by making a donation to help us fund this free podcast, as well as shows, masterclasses and more in the UK in 2018 by visiting www.arian-productions.com/support. A big thank you to everyone that's made donations so far, and I'm really excited to say an order has been put in for some very, very special Show People podcast mugs and pens. They are absolutely gorgeous. We'll send out an email as soon as they're ready. You can also help us by giving us an iTunes review, as that really helps with the magic Apple algorithms to help us reach more people passionate about the performing arts and those dedicated to their craft. Lastly, if you have any comments, ideas, or things you want to send into the show, you can reach me on Twitter at Andrew Keats. You can send me an email to info@arian-productions.com, or like the Show People Facebook page at facebook.com/showpeoplepodcast, where you can also join in the Show People Listeners Forum and find out about all things Show People. Lastly, I'm delighted to say we have just passed 6,000 downloads. That's absolutely amazing. Our next episode is out on the 12th of March. Please don't forget to donate. And remember, just be better.
Or they get paid more because they have a penis, and apparently there's something missing with having a vagina. It's just not enough for a pay raise.